I'm sure you would have got good points and also analyzed yourself in the situation. And don't worry, because failure is necessary to have a experienced judgment as a project manager. Let's move on to the next. Now, as a project manager, what is the main thing? It is, of course, getting things done from your team, right? So, when we say about getting things done, there are certain principles in project management, like identifying your constraints of the project, how you plan, and why the planning is needed, what to plan. There are a number of things which comes into the mind. Definitely, planning is very important. We all will agree. Planning is the important phase of your project. And the whole thing, if you plan or not plan properly, then the whole project will fail. So the first step is to plan well. So there are multiple things we'll see: why to plan, what to plan, and how to plan. Then comes the identifying dependencies of the project. So when we talk about the project, I'm sure in certain organizations they have the template wherein the project managers have to create planning, and there is certain sections called there is any dependency. I can give you an example for this dependency. What is the for example, you take your project. For example, I have a project which has to be built from the scratch. It is a software product, ERP, with the huge user base. 500 users are using it across my country, across various regions. Then what is the definitely in such a huge scale of project, there is to be dependency. For example, if I'm building a new framework in a new technology, then what are the dependencies? Definitely I need to know that the business logic, and whether if I move to the new technology, then how to scrap this old technology. And because already the users are using those technologies which is in the production in the online, so how I migrate from this, these are dependency, right? And how the business logic from the old framework, can it be reused? So those are the angles that we as a project manager we need to think, so that our life become easy. And definitely then comes, this was the software part, then comes the resource part of it, the people part of it, that how much you are dependent upon your core resources. What happens many a times in various project in various domains, we have certain experts because they have become experts in your team, because they have spent so much of time in your project. And and then of course, as a human tendency, will give them more responsibility. So it becomes a people dependent project. So it is must as a project manager that you transfer that knowledge. You always have a backup if it is a large project. If it is not possible, that your project budget is not that much that you can have backup for those resources, those people, then for those team members basically, so then you can have those things documented. That's how it works, because now the environment is highly competitive, and also people leave, they leave to different organizations, so they carry the knowledge with them. So it's very important to document those knowledge. And that's how it goes in large project and complex projects, and even small projects you need to have documentation. Then comes the major part of it is estimating time. I'm sure all of you are aware of estimation, but there are certain things that we need to consider while estimating. That's how the expert project management comes into the picture. That what are the dependency, and have you underestimated or overestimated the project, and adding contingencies. This is the basic, because sometimes under pressure of the client or somewhere, we are always, because we have to handle n number of things, like whether it's client pressure or team pressure, we sometimes forget all these kind of details. You will be adding contingencies, but it is important to see the practical contingency. Sometimes we overlook issues, that's how the project fail. So these are the main pointers that comes into the planning, identifying dependency, and estimating time. Why should we plan? That's the first basic question, right? Why should we plan? We could just get the requirements. If your client is very clear about the requirements, we can just start working. It's very important that we need to plan because there are good reasons. First is to understand your project better, because if you don't plan anything, even in day to day life, if you're not organized already, speaking and theoretically it looks very simple, but when it comes to the actual implementation and execution part of it, I have dealt with the bigger projects, with bigger maintenance projects, and especially in financial sectors like insurance, they always come up because it's not their fault, because the rules keep changing, or the financial, the market is so dynamic. So making those changes in the product, it's important to first of all know what is your project about as a project manager. Then only you can make those changes and argue with the client that it is going to be correct or it is not going to be correct. So that is one part of it. There are certain situation, it's always not that you're involved in that project for from the beginning. I have seen projects, software projects running for years, and certain time people, the project managers come, those who were in the initial phase, they were not in the support phase. So in such cases, to know the client better, to know the project better, it is important to plan that. Then it is definitely to work out the best way to approach things, to communicate to both your team and the client or customer exactly how the project is going to be approached. So at the end, it is about the communication. If I have seen many project managers, I think definitely where they were very good managers, they plan everything in their head, but they don't communicate to the team. And I have seen many people like that who are potential project managers, but since due to this part that they don't communicate to both client and team, they they were not able to, yeah, then it's they're not able to perform in the capacity of project manager. So the basic thing is, yes, you plan it, but if unless and until you communicate to the customer and the team, then how they will understand what you're doing? And especially in software projects where the deliverable comes after you have tested, after your team has worked it technically, coding take place, then after some time only the end product the reaches to in the hands of customer. So it's very important to plan so that you take the client also in confidence. Yes, see, we are doing something to help you get work done and keep track of progress. And again, it is to work out the best way to approach things and to track things very clearly. Because I have seen when I was on leave in certain projects, my project leaders have taken over. So in those cases, the things becomes chaotic, disorganized. So yes, you have issues to work out, you have certain things to work out, but it can happen that it's not yeah, technically you might be providing solution, but if you miss on these parts like communicating to the client, tracking, then definitely your project is going to be failed, because it it has a culminative effect, and your client won't understand what is happening. Then they start making noises, and also it becomes a point of escalation. You trust me, I have seen such projects where the project managers have planned very well, and they were executing, they were doing the work behind, back of the project, but since they have not communicated to the customer, it becomes a very big issues. I have seen such projects getting failure because customer felt that we are not updating them properly, so that these comes. So what, again I'm stressing that as a expert project manager, first you need to understand why we need a plan in place, so that we can track it better and to communicate to the customer better, and to provide direction to the team. Because if you don't have a clarity, then definitely your team won't have the clarity. Sometimes planning is just as about the process as the eventual end result. Planning can be useful simply because it allows you to allocate time to really thinking about how the project will be achieved. And again, it is kind of lean principles that planning helps you to focus on the priority things and leave behind the non, because that's how day to day I usually sit with a plan on daily basis. Because it's important, there are projects I have handled where the client changes, they themselves are not clear, they change the requirements so quickly. So it becomes important to maintain the track. This process will help you understand your project better. You will have outlined the biggest chunk of work, you will understand what needs to be delivered, and you will note any dependency to play in the project. Likewise, a better understanding of the project will entail can it can help you identify the best approach of tackling it. Are you going to be able to give estimates because you have done similar projects in the past, or in this project as a whole world of unknown complexities are there? So again, it can happen that you have a plan, then all these comes into the picture first of all internally to you, because it can happen that you have dealt such projects before, so you can take the experience ahead and make those estimations and use those judgments. Or I have handled a completely new project wherein I was not aware of anything, and I have not handled similar project. In those cases, then the planning will help you to ask for the external support, not external, basically external from your project. Actually, in the same company, you can reach out to your PMOs. In many organizations, there are PMOs who are coming, and they can help you in planning, because that's how it is. Because project management is nothing that you can just sit alone and just plan. It's not going to work out. Plans are often most valuable as a shared understanding how the project is going to be approached. Once you move on from tiny project from which you and your laptop are the only resources required, you will realize how valuable plans can be. So once you have made that, I know initially the people who are in the basic project management, they might be thinking is it worthwhile? I know in my mind what is to be done. But trust me, there are a lot of there are a lot of companies who are coming up with like I mentioned earlier, who are coming with ideas that they have tools, software tools, project management tools, which helps in end to end tracking. Like first you can plan, keep the plan ready in those tools, and then you can track those with your team. So it becomes a traceability kind of thing, and then you can also even see whether you're on but you're operating within the budget of the project. So that's how it is. Of course, again, there is thing we need to have a balance as a project management. It doesn't mean that the plan should be full of minute detail. It isn't a replacement for your personal to-do list. First of all, many project managers, they misunderstand plan. They overdo things. That also becomes overwhelming. Because imagine on day-to-day basis, I can just ask you a question. Like in on day-to-day basis, if you start planning in so detail how your life will be, because there are a lot of dynamics, there are a lot of unpredictability in the world, and in the client's world they will keep on coming and changing the requirement. Then if you start changing it, that is also not practical, that is not humanly plausible. So nor should you spend more time updating the percentage complete figures on the plan than doing actual work. So again, there is a balance about everything. So it's not like you should just keep on updating, then you will be doing just that, you will be only planning. And I have seen many project managers, they are failing because they are not having connection with the ground level. I have read in once Jack Wells and the big leaders autobiography and books, where they have told about how the leadership is. So always in those companies like GE and the bigger companies which are very successful, what they have done is they have a connection, the leaders have a connection with the ground level reality, because that's how. So if you keep planning and just keep updating it, you will lose your touch with the team and don't know what actually is happening. Then you become just a high level planner. So that's also we don't need, right? So it is important to keep a balance. And basically you need to understand the planning is to have to basically provide your team a direction, and so that you also identify what are the constraints in the project, what is the direction you will be going. Because without plan nothing is going to happen, and it is a direction which will guide you, your team and client, and you can work collaboratively. I have seen projects wherein I have worked, because that's again a project manager's job. As an expert project manager, you need to talk to the client. I have done in many of my projects wherein I have asked that if this project is going to be successful, and especially in software projects, believe me, if we don't work it collaboratively, the project and product is going to fail. Because the client, we will be developing something and then giving it to the client, it comes back and forth. To avoid that, it is better to talk to the client representative and say that we can make it collaborative, we can include them in the planning stage. Again, it depends on the situation you are in, whether your client is cooperative and you have that kind of a relationship with the customer, and also whether the client himself or herself is very clear about the requirement. So these dynamics depends upon the project, and that's where the expert project management comes in the picture, where you are going to sit and analyze that what kind of approach I have made a plan. So what kind of planning, till what detail I should share it to the customer, whether I should share it to the whole level of detail, so that we can have a collaborative planning. We have done in many projects wherein we since my team was very new to the ERP application, and we have collaborated with the customer, and they used to transfer the function knowledge, and with our technical knowledge, we built an excellent product. So in that way, these things takes very much time and efforts from both the team and from the customer team side. So but it, and trust me, it is not that it can't happen. We have a lot of assumptions in as a manager. Trust me, I also had it. So we should forego those things, and just if we keep an open mind, because of the day to day issues as a project manager we face, we always lose this upper, the higher level thing which actually needs to be done. So once we focus on these as an expert manager, our plans and our project will be successful. Now we have seen why we need planning, then we'll see how what to plan and how to plan. So when we come to the point what to plan, this looks a very trivial question, but trust me, these are the small thing which we think it is small, but this plays a major role in project success, and also it makes you an expert or a expert project manager. Because at the end, you need to have a definite scope to plan, right? And also you need to pick which is important and for the project time being for currently, and which is not. So definitely when we speak about what to plan, the deliverables part comes in. Traditional project planning is focused around tasks, and that basically because there was clear requirement. So when there are clear requirements, you can definitely plan like that. You can just say these are the tasks and it's going to happen. But now the world has becoming dynamic. There are, and I think all of you will agree, there are n number of things comes up in day to day planning. So it can't be just a task focus, and at the end again, I'm just emphasizing on the part that we are dealing with a team which consists of 50 members or 100 members. Then it can't happen that we just focus on the task and things will get done. It is impractical to assume that. So you come up with daily some or the other people issues. The people might be sick, they might be going on vacation. So many things comes into. So jobs that you need to do or actions you need to take, that is just not the thing. At a first glance, this might seem sensible. A task based plan will literally give you a list of items that you need to do, like to do lists for the entire project. But what is the problem with the task based approaches, however, is that they are hard to measure. I think all of us will agree that our day to day life will become easy as a project manager when you split the task. I always say that we need to split the task, the deliverables in such a in a such a manner so that the it is measurable. Like so that how you will track if you can't measure those tasks, it will not be easy, right? Like how when you ask a team member like have you completed this work or not, that the task should be measurable, so that they can say, yes, this is 80% complete, this is 100% complete, likewise. So if you have a, because these helps in the tracking. If you have a measurable task, if you have completed 80% of your task, does that mean that 80% of the project is complete? How can you measure whether a task is 10% complete or 90% complete? This problem is particularly common in knowledge work, where there are a lot of there are difficulties in sometimes in developing algorithm or designing the right layout, which can take much more time than we expected. So I agree completely to this, that when we break down the deliverables, when we are planning the deliverables, then it is very important. Again, this all depends on the type of the project. There can be a situation where you are handling a project which is very simple, like you know the project very well, you know the client's business very well, and it is just a simple change request, the project, small project where it scope is well defined, then okay, the task base would really fit in, and also here the team also knows the job well, then it is fine. But when it comes to a large project, when it comes to a highly complicated project where you have to build in from the scratch in the software area, or if you take any other real time project in construction business or something like that, then definitely the task base, yes, this is to be done, and it is not going to be useful, because the world has become agile. So you have daily some or the other issues coming up. And also what happens in these task based, when we usually nowadays we have project, because the technology is moving fast, and we have in software lot of projects where the team and ourselves, we are not aware of the technology, we are not aware of their advantage and disadvantage, how to use it. So in those cases, you yourself, if you're not knowing the domain, if you're not knowing the technology, then how you will be able to plan it, right? And because you're yourself not sure, so if the team is telling it has completed the work or not, you will not be able to gauge it. The similar problem I have faced when I was planning a new project. I was building from the scratch an ERP project, which has to have, first of all, we need to study the old framework, and we need to come up with the disadvantage and provide a solution. In this case, there were a lot of options and available, so we ourselves were not sure. So we have to take the external technical expertise help, and then come to a planning. And in those cases, in those such kind of project, you need to even take the help of the expertise to groom, to mentor your team and yourself to the with that new technology. So that's why the task based approach in those kind of project is not helpful. So if we are not planning tasks, then what we should plan instead? So that is where the comes the part is deliverables. If you're uncertain, I'm sure 80% of the project nowadays, and especially in software industry, we are uncertain because of the lot of complexities involved. So, and sometimes, as I earlier again and again telling, the client itself is not sure, because there is a disconnect between the end user and the client, and it become, then when we deliver the project, then these things comes up in the picture, when it was when the user does not accept the product. So when on such occasion, when we are not sure about the situation, then comes the deliverables in the deliverables comes into the picture. We should plan deliverable, the actual end product of your project. It can be machines, building, cash, or intangible like software, a brand identity, and so on. These deliverables depends on the project you are working on, and also it depends on the situation to situation. As an expert project manager, it is your duty to identify deliverables. When we say deliverables, again, to avoid unnecessary headache and overhead, and it becomes, the planning becomes an overhead. It should not come to a situation where the planning itself becomes an overhead. You should know what are the deliverables, like even in uncertain situation, right? Like we can have, yeah, we are building a prototype, that can be a deliverable. So in each situation, there can be deliverables which entirely depends upon your project. The difference between a task and a deliverable is that the task is a job you are busy doing, like building, designing, creating, while the deliverable is a product you end up with, like the end product, a document, a design. So when, as a project manager, when the planning is focused on deliverables, there is high point of clarity, and also the client will also be happy that you're working on something, and it is easy to communicate. With some tasks, it can be difficult to identify the associated deliverables, but you should always focus on the end product rather than the task itself. For instance, in a software project, the team might spend a lot of time on the task of writing documentation, detailing the designs. But what really matters at the end of the day is the documentation or design itself. I have seen lot of projects, and even I have committed those. I'm specifying that in this project manager's course, I want to give you practical examples where, as a manager, maybe we have committed those mistakes, so that as an experienced project manager, we don't repeat it further. So I have done in many project when initially when I was handling a project of a small team. Then I used to be very process oriented, but to the extent that I didn't maintain the balance, and the team always used to focus on the documentation, get the sign off, and then we will start the work. But in actual scenario, I'll tell you what happened if you're too focused on those things. Like there are projects where the client pays you on the fixed big contract, that if you deliver something, then the billing happens. So it's important for the project manager to plan the deliverables, the end product. And if you start focusing too much on documentation also, it's very bad, because in the client side also, it's not the only project they are handling. So then it becomes that your team will give the documentation and then they will sign off. Sometimes the rigidity is not possible practically, right? So that's why it is important that we should know how much percentage of our time, team's time, should go in in the documentation writing, and these things we can plan accordingly. The perils of the percentage complete measuring, if you see the perils of the percentage complete, because when your senior management asks what okay, for a deliverable, which stage you are in, because always you can't, especially in the software products, you can't show them a product because it takes certain time, and if it is a new technology, it takes more time. So in those cases, what you will do, then you will say yes, this requirement phases this much complete, this much percentage complete. Measuring the percentage of tasks complete or similar technique is an extremely dangerous practice. Sometimes the biggest problem that it is very subjective, meaning that if I say 10% complete, 90% complete, so why is this a problem? It is again, it I'm saying the percentage complete could be definitely problematic in some stages, because it is, when we say 10% complete, it is on a very high level, we are not detailing out. So if we are planning the deliverables, so we can show to our senior management also, I'm sure they will agree that yes, we have completed the prototyping, we have complete. So that become that is more sensible in say than saying yes, the project is completed 10%. That doesn't define anything. The problem of percentage complete is people are over optimistic. How often have you thought something would take half the amount time that it actually took? And sometimes it's not honest, and sometimes when the senior, I've seen in senior management review, and even in your own review, when you are asking your team, I have seen, I'm giving these tips so that we don't make these mistakes again and we learn from these mistakes, is I have seen in many of the projects, in when I used to handle initially, I used to ask the team, okay, this task and the general task, how much is complete? This is especially it happens in the software project team, where they'll say, yes, this product is 50% complete, this product is 60% complete. But that doesn't, because you can't discuss those, it becomes very higher level. So when we talk about the deliverables, then the tracking becomes easier, then we won't have last moment surprises. And actually your project, in myself, I have handled such team where then the people come to you and say that yes ma'am, this is completed, and then again the project has not been completed, or then we have to face the deadline has not been achieved. So all these things we have faced. Then works up expands to fill the available item. Even if a task seems to be half done after 2 days, if you have allocated 6 days to it, there's a good chance that it will take 6 days to achieve. Because when we say percentage complete, it becomes very difficult. And yeah, we will be assuming something. So the tracking becomes very higher level. So we have seen, and definitely the next point will be not to be over optimistic. Now, how to plan? This is a very, very critical part in overall planning. You know why to plan? Then, now, if you're very clear about what to plan, then how to plan. Every organization have definitely some template, whether you're following the CMI or you're not following any proper structure like ISO or anything. But every organization may be having certain, maybe some people will, project managers might be doing it in Excel. But what is the basics of the project plan is you need to break down the complex work into pieces. That's where the whole point is, because so that it is easy to track. So when we say that the whole work need to the complex work, because when we start, if especially in the new development projects in software or in any other construction business, that in the initial phase when the client is giving requirement, it might feel like a ocean. I have dealt with such project, like if you're building an ERP, a huge scale project from the scratch, then it looks like an ocean. Oh my god, like we have to do so many things. But that's why it's a human tendency. So it is better to break down into phases, and that's how the agile project management and all comes into the picture, where the client gets involved and it is built in phases. So iteration after iteration, and then it has been dealt. And if you're following the SDLC methodology, the traditional methodology, then it is better to break down the complex work into pieces. Then comes identify dependencies, focus on true dependencies. See, in a project, there could be n number of dependencies, because when it comes to the real time project, when you're handling a large project, so there could be dependencies on resources, there could be dependencies, or sometimes it is also dependent on the clients, because the client will have the major functional knowledge and they will dictate your direction of the project. So there could be n number of dependencies. But what are your true dependencies, where if those are not, it is actually, if those are not identified, your project could fail. Here this is a focus point, because in expert project management, if you see the project managers who are mostly successful, they do all these things methodologically. They are organized. When a project comes, they will try to break down the complex work into pieces, because simple tracking makes your life easy as a project manager. Then identify the dependencies and the constraints, and estimate how long each piece will take. The estimation plays a very major role, because if in majorly software projects, the estimation, not even software project, like any other project, the estimation tells you how much time you are going to take, how much cost is involved in the project, whether you will be within the budget or not. So all these things depends on estimation. And I'm sure in practical situation, the estimation never, it cannot be never perfect, because the initial, when we are when in the bidding stage of the project, the client would have given an overall high level requirement. Then comes one estimation, and then comes the next estimation. When you come to know the detailed requirement, then your estimation kind of keep changing. So always you should have a process of convincing your customer that this estimation can change, and the re-estimation needs to be approved if it is logical. Then comes adding, so these all has to be mentioned in the scope of the work when the contract is given, because many a client, they don't feel that they will be estimating, and they have illogical demands that yes, one short estimation is enough. It's never possible, because estimation keeps changing, because your requirements keep changing, so it all happens. Then adding contingency, it is definitely required for budgeting. Then definitely considering the risk. Why considering the risk is the major part. And yeah, When I started as a project manager at the very, very fresher level, then definitely I was not able to find risk that much because we overlook certain things. Sometimes the risk comes in many forms. We would think because sometimes the risk, like for example, I can give you an example that we have identified the risk, but sometimes the risk takes more prioritization because it needs to be handled currently. We need to prioritize this risk and have the mitigation plan accordingly. For example, in software cases itself, sometimes the team, when in the initial stage, the configuration tool or certain tools which your project is using, it might not might not feel, yeah, that tool is required currently. We just say that, yeah, we will require it later, in the later phases of the project. But it can happen that without the tool you can't your team can't move forward. So there are certain risks, and the risks considering the people involved, like if this resource takes leave or long leave, then your projects can impact, you can have a high impact, or you in those situations you need to have a backup. So the risk identification and mitigation is the main where the project are failed, or they can be, you can avert or you can avoid failures by identifying the correct risk in your project. So it requires a day to day monitoring of the project. Then also there is representing the plan in a format that the team, board, and the stakeholders will understand and follow. So we'll see all those breakdown, the complex, that is your WBS Gantt chart. I'm sure all of you might have used it in your projects, and also it is just a brush up of these knowledge because we are talking about project management. And definitely project management starts with the planning with WBS. And but I will give you tips what can help you, which can help you in practical projects, like identifying dependency. I'm giving you in this end of the session exercise. You just go to your project and see, first of all, are you using a WBS? Are you breaking down your complex work into pieces? If not, start doing it. And second is how you are doing it, like whether you are in the WBS, whether the deliverables are the end product or just you're defining a percentage complete on it. So just analyze it. And second, the main priority point is, have you identified the dependencies on your project? Because I'm sure I can give you an example, but for your project, it might be totally different. It could be a people issue. It could sometimes, trust me, it is sometimes the dependency could be the team dynamics, because the project is so knitted that it is codependent on other tasks, and it needs to have a team dynamics. So that could be also a dependency, that one work needs to be, it's a sequential project, that one team, your project itself is subdivided into teams, and one work has to be completed, then only the other can start. So there are complex projects in the world, so you need to identify what are the dependencies on your project, and then come up with whether it is on track. It is because dependencies we should try to remove the dependencies. If not possible, then should be under control. Then estimating time. Definitely you need to go back to your project, see how you estimate, and have you added any contingency, and how you do a risk management, how you do risk management for your project. Whether we are talking about the basic project management or the advanced project management, or whatever the term we give it, we all need to accept that planning is an important part of project management. And when it comes to the advanced project management and advanced for the people who we call as an expert project managers, they know how to plan very well, and they keep their life simple because the projects are unpredictable. The changes are always the customer will come with a change, and that could be so dynamic that the customer wants it in 1 or 2 days. So all these things, it's important, very very, let's have first the pointer here so that it's easy for us. So it's very important to have breaking down the deliverables. I'm sure that in day to day life also, when we plan, I think most of us do a family budget, or we we do financial planning. So what you do to see that whether your cost is not, you are not spending more, so you break down into small pieces, right, to track it. So similarly, when you are planning a vacation, then you delegate so that a particular itinerary to someone, or you delegate certain buying or shopping to someone. So likewise, all the task has to be made simple so that it is easy to track. That's how the project management also goes. It's a very simple example, but we will see more examples. But this again, breaking down the deliverables depends from project to project. So let's see the first pointer. The items need to be achievable and measurable. Again, I'm saying that the planning, the breaking down the deliverables, it depends from project to project. Let's see a IT scenario, IT project scenario, wherein you have a just we'll take two scenarios. One is very simple situation where you are the project manager for years in that project, and the client comes with a small change, but since it is not that small, you need to convert it to project. So you can just see that how it can be divided into deliverables, right? So that is one situation. So you are in control of the project, you know about the project very well, and you and your team are very well, because if you're working in that project for years, 4 to 5 years is enough to be functional and technical expert for the project, right? So then you are very clear of the requirement also, and you know the client very well. In such situation, the breaking down the deliverables becomes very easy. You know exactly if there is some change in the existing system, it's very easy. Similarly, when you are construction in the construction business or in any domain, the existing to change, so there are some projects which need changes in the existing system. So those things where which is running for years, and it needs just a small tweaking up of certain logics, where in technical, in IT industry or in other industry, it is you are very well aware of the whole thing, and you are in control of the situation. Then the breaking down of the deliverables, it is very easy, and for those project managers it is easy to achieve, and you can break down into achievable and measurable format. So I will again give you one scenario. Most of you who would have gone for leadership trainings, corporate leadership trainings, they always say that your goal, whether it is yourself, you're setting a goal in your life, or if you're setting a goal for your project, it should be smart, wherein the M, it is the measurable goal. It's always practical. For example, it's important that if you keep those goals or those tasks, the deliverable, achievable, easy to track. Most of the project managers, why they are not able to achieve the plan, or they skip the deadline because of this, because they prepare very high level of planning even though they were in control of the project. I have seen in many cases that like my project leaders or even my peer project managers, they fail the project even though it is small and it could have been achieved. But since they have unrealistic expectations from the team and they don't set a achievable goal, then you will definitely able to succeed in that project, right? So we need to break down into achievable and measurable deliverables. But again, just consider a situation, and since it is the course about expert project management, so I'm giving an extreme cases where you have to handle a large project. For example, you have been given by your client, you're handling support of a ERP, and you have been given change the whole framework of the ERP. And since you're doing the maintenance for only 1 year, I'm just giving you a just hypothetical situation, how you will handle it, you know. So where your team is new to the function and domain, and you're new to the technology, then what happens to breaking down the deliverables? In such case, what happens is, again, I'm giving the example of an ERP where the new framework has to be built. First of all, you need to sit with the client. What are their requirements? What are the difficulties they are facing in the existing new old framework for the ERP. Again, this is an IT situation. So then they will come up with that they are facing performance issues, or the user interface has to be changed so that they have a less data entry to be done, so that it saves their business time. And trust me, it saves their millions of cost of the client, right? So then you have to sit with the client for the requirement, and you have to build an iterative model, because in such cases deliverables will be like in the first scenario, because you need to understand the technology, you need to build a prototype, build a transaction screen to the client, give them as a prototype, and if they approve, then go to the next stage. Then here the planning the whole thing and deliverable is not practical one. Even if the client and the stakeholder ask you that, you should not be, you should say very clearly that it can't be done. And as a project manager, it is our duty to suggest them that we should go about an iterative model. In that way, the client can also see the advantages of the new framework and new technology. You will also get time to mentor your team on the new technology. So it's always important to see an expert project manager knows when to use what kind of methodology, whether it is agile or traditional. And also when we talk about planning, they know how to convince the client and go accordingly. Because just you set an unachievable schedules for your team, then it's not going to help out. Then next is definitely the practical and logical deliverables. Like I have told in the example, if the project is complex, where the situation is like where the situation is your team doesn't know the technology or functional things, then it is always important to make the deliverables logical and practical. It should be achievable. It's not that we are expecting 2 months work in 2 days. It's not possible. So mostly the project managers, they fail in this area. So again, we will just reiterate that the first task you need to work out is how you are going to break the single end goal of your project into individual deliverables that are small enough to be both achievable and measurable. Striking the right balance here is crucial. Deliverables that are too large, they can't be you can't either the deliverables should not be too large, that's again come to the practical and logical deliverable logical segmentation of the deliverables. And it can't be too detailed, because then it becomes a micromanagement of the team. And then comes lowest level of detail is included when your project is very unpredictable. Already it is many projects, they are in red condition. Trust me, I have been given certain projects in IT as a project manager where the project is in a very very red situation, where the profit is not coming, the resources are leaving, because then you have to go and see what is the process lag, if the client is not getting any deliverable, what are the streamlining to be done, maybe there is some lag in the risk management part. So all these things needs a very thorough analysis in case of planning. So a simple example, let's before seeing the next part, we will see a simple example which again will give you a clarity about what is breaking down the deliverables. Like suppose we are developing a website for a local cake shop, one that's never had any kind of online presence before. So nowadays the digital marketing, the digital presence is very important for any startup. So you have a client who have come for a website and the designing, and they themselves are not sure. So likewise, you can have many situations. A client who has never done this kind of project before, then they themselves are not clear of the requirement. And but this project is a simple one, website. But you can also get a client who comes and who don't have any requirement clarity, but they want to execute you a complex project. So all these scenario, as an expert project manager, it's your duty to chalk out, analyze, and then make a plan. So in this case, although the business has sound reasons for approaching the project, the owners believe a website will give them a broader reach and will thereby increase the sales. They are little hazy on exactly what it is they want. So it happens mostly with all the client, because especially in IT projects, because they are not aware of the technical. For example, in some cases You need to suggest as a consultant to the client the solution, like this technology if you use, you will overcome this performance problem, etc. So it you have to work as a consultant. So this is where you have to do an analysis, and since the client itself is not clear, you need to have first some discussions with the client team, the user team, and the owner and the staff. And you have to first get the basic list of the requirements together, and you need to generate some ideas. Now you will then you have to put all those points, and you make a project plan. So an initial, just a project plan, or for the website will be, like for the cake shop website could be, first interface you can have is about the store section, including contact details, how to find them, the cake shop. Then second could be ordering online. It could be your online catalog page or admin interface, like for adding, editing, deleting products. Or it could be a shopping basket functionality, like adding an item, editing the item, payments, confirmation emails, interface to order or delivery system. Then there could be a page that could be a get a quote contact form for customer cakes for special occasions like birthdays, anniversary. Then there could be a photo gallery, that special occasions photo gallery where you can put a slideshow functionality or a photo upload. And on the technical part of it, it could be like web hosting and domain name registration and email address set. So this is how you should structure down, where all the points I have described, definitely you know that these are achievable, these pages. So first, in the situation where the client is not clear, and in such situation where the website is involved, it is more on the interface level, on the content level. So it is important, the crux of the project you need to analyze and get it approved from the customer. That's the main point. So for this example, we are assuming that you have already agreed whether you are building the site from scratch or whether a particular set of technologies will be used. So again, as I mentioned, all these things needs a thorough analysis, because as an expert project manager, when the project comes to you, if you need to know whether it is from the scratch or what is that, because many times the we will suggest something but the client restrain from it due to the budget issues. So all these things comes into the picture. At the initial stage, whenever there is so much unpredictability, it is better that you don't need to give some low level of details. But as the project goes, it's very important to break down into details and track them. So that's how the breaking down to the deliverables part goes in. I'm sure at the end of the session, I want all of you to analyze in your project how you are breaking down the whole chunk of the project into logical and practical deliverables. And definitely, I'm sure that you might be doing it. If you're not doing it, then you have to find out the what are the lags there. Is your deliverable not practical, or if the client is unpredictable about the requirement, then how can you have those filled in? Like for example, you can put a diagram. Most of the clients, they are not very comfortable with the technical coding language or something like that, so you can put a diagram and then freeze the requirement and then go about it. So this is not only about the IT domain. This particular thing, breaking down the deliverables, it could be applied to all the general domains wherein a project is about the deliverables. So if you put all the project deliverables into a specific one, your life is easy, because always the dynamics are high. The because for example, the website project itself, the content is going to be changed. The client may not be very happy with the content. They'll say that you keep this content, and your newsletters will come and your blogging will come. So there are so many things which comes into the client mind, and also the digital marketing structure is changing day by day. So all these things, keeping all these things, it's important to have the deliverables logical, so that the changes that the client is suggesting is easy to make.